What up? We got a phenomenal guest for you guys tonight.
Yep.
Former Los Angeles Raider, Dallas Cowboy, Phoenix Cardinal, Arizona Cardinal, Carolina Panther, and Denver Bronco. If you don't know Steve Beuerlein, folks, you should. Steve, how's it going?
I'm doing great, guys. Don't forget about the Fighting Irish, though, too. Did you say that?
Right.
Sure. Well, that's the where I wanted to start.
Okay.
So
Well, yeah.
not forgetting
You
about
want
it.
to start there, or I want to start with the best pass in the history of all passes in the world? No. Yes, we got to start there because Steve Beuerlein threw the best pass I've ever seen in my life.
Really?
And I saw with my own eyes.
I'm trying to think of which one that could be.
Okay,
There's
so
so many great passes,
but this is the number one.
Okay.
So meet Steve on the golf course. Well, we meet him the night before.
Oh.
We're at the golf course on the 9th hole, Chris and I, and Steve comes up with his team on the golf course, and I go, Steve, I got something for you. Steve goes, what you got? So I had a football. Actually, the people next to us had a football, and I picked up football and I throw it over to Steve. Everybody's excited, and Steve starts throwing the ball around to everybody, and everybody's going out for passes and everything, having a ball on the 9th. So next, one of his guys on his golf group goes like this, and Chris is sitting back there, and he wants to take a video. He's getting his camera ready. Steve throws the best pass I've ever seen. Tight spiral. I mean, he's still got it.
Yeah,
it's so good that it goes through the guy's hands and hits Chris. Boom! Right in the stomach.
Yes, it was a direct hit, and I mean, it could not have even been planned any better than that. It was a perfect throw. I mean,
it was so good.
The guy put his hands right up there. It went right through his hands. And
I think his hands are still there too, because that thing was so good of a pass.
Chris never even moved. He just stood there. And thank goodness he had a little bit extra padding in there. It was okay.
Just a little bit. Yeah.
Oh my gosh! So that is the greatest pass I've ever seen in my with my own eyes. It was so good. Steve, at first, he felt bad. He's like, "Oh,
I was mortified. I thought I was in trouble, to be honest with you. But
everybody starts laughing. I'm rolling down the hill.
Chris didn't even
and
move.
He started laughing, so that was good.
Oh man, I was crying.
Oh, it was hilarious. Now I will say this: I believe I can remember a few better passes, more meaningful passes than that one.
All right. Well, give me a couple of your favorites.
Well, I think one that really stands out. It was in 1991. I was playing for the Cowboys, and I'd been through a lot with the Raiders the previous couple years, and I got traded to the Cowboys right before the opening game in the 91 season. And fortunately for me, Troy Aikman did not get hurt until week 12. So I had time to learn the offense. I had time to kind of get my bearings. But I hadn't played in the NFL in over a year and a half at that point. So I was on the Raiders the year before, but Al Davis kept me in street clothes the whole year. That's a whole other story. But I get into the game in the third quarter. Now, this is the year the Redskins won the Super Bowl. They were 11-0 at the time. Mark Rippon was their quarterback. And we were 6-5. And Aikman gets hurt in the third quarter. And I go in, and we hang on, make a few plays. We end up beating the Redskins in RFK in D.C. And the big play that did it for us was a pass to Michael Irvin, who was shadowed all day long by Darrell Green, who at the time was the best corner in football. Already had a Hall of Fame career at that point. But it was a skinny post on the backside, and Darrell Green tried to cut in front and intercept it. And I kind of anticipated that. So I put the ball behind Michael Irvin, and he was always really, really good at adjusting up to the ball on the move. And the ball hit him kind of on the back shoulder, and he spun out and took it down the sideline for a touchdown to kind of ice the game over the Redskins. So that was one big one. And then shoot, I had many to Tim Brown over the years at Notre Dame, and then in the NFL as well. I had a couple nice ones to a guy named Eddie McCaffrey, who you guys probably heard of, and
Oh yeah.
when we were playing with the Broncos together. And fortunately, I played with a lot of really good players, but if I had to pick one, it would be that one to Michael Irvin.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
have
that's
to
cool.
agree. Now, is it okay if I
You go for it.
go with my starter question?
Yeah, we're starting right now.
Oh, are you
Yeah,
sure?
you are.
Oh, okay, thanks.
Yeah.
So, the moment you step foot in South Bend, Indiana, the Notre Dame campus, what's going through your head?
What the hell am I doing here?
That's honest.
That's the first thing
Wow.
I thought about, because the way it was back then, and believe me, it was a little different than it is today. And we had, no pampering whatsoever. There was nothing that was, done for us, so to speak. We had to get ourselves to South Bend. And the only way to do it at that time was I flew into Chicago, and I took a shuttle bus from Chicago with all my stuff, all my belongings. My parents didn't go with me because we were getting out there early for summer football, and it just was a different time back then, and my parents couldn't really afford it. So I'm on this plane and then this bus, and I get dropped off at the main circle right in front of the Golden Dome, and there's nobody even there to greet me. And I'm literally sitting there with all my bags, and it's the middle of summer, hot as heck, that Midwest humidity. And I just remember standing there looking around and just trying to, figure out what I was supposed to do. And I said, what did I get myself into? Now, obviously, the next 4 years, my feelings changed greatly. And even though the football didn't work out the way that we had planned on it working out, my Notre Dame experience was unbelievable. And I love going back as often as I can to this day.
What do you think you learned not on the football field that changed your life at Notre Dame?
Well, I think there's a lot of things that the Notre Dame experience taught me. The quality of the people that I was dealing with was incredibly strong. The quality of the education, obviously, very high. One of the things I love most about it, I was raised in a real strong Catholic family. The faith element on the campus at Notre Dame, if you want it, they don't force it on you. It's just something, if you want it, it's there for you. And I really feel like I grew in my faith back there at Notre Dame during those years. And probably it was a result of not only the atmosphere there and having the opportunity, but it was also because of the adversity that I went through during those 4 years. I mean, it was an incredibly difficult 4-year period for me, football wise, with Jerry Faust for 3 years, and then making the transition to Lou Holtz in Lou Holtz's first year at Notre Dame in 1986, which was a great transition and a great opportunity for me. But the adversity, the ups and downs that I had to deal with during those 4 years, I don't think I could have made it through without a real strong faith and a belief that everything's going to be okay. I'm going to come out of this. And so those are the things that really, I think, made the most impression on me.
Let's talk about, hold on. I got to go on.
Go
this.
while you
Mental
have it.
toughness. A lot of these young kids don't understand that going away to college, you have to be mentally tough. What type of advice would you give these young kids? I know that was such and such a long time ago,
Yeah.
but it's
plays
still,
today.
yeah, exactly.
Well, I would argue that that's one of the big problems today, is that I don't think that today's players are as mentally tough or need to be as mentally tough today as they used to, because the mentality used to be that you have to earn your opportunity. You have to go out and earn it by your play on the field. Doesn't matter what you did before, doesn't matter where you've been. No one's getting catered to. You have to go out and earn the respect of your teammates and earn that position on the field. And if you didn't, there wasn't a transfer portal. There wasn't, daddy right there to say, hey, we're going to go take our game somewhere else, take our ball and go somewhere else. let's figure this out. Let's tough it out, find a way to create an opportunity, get through the mentally difficult part of it, and prove to the coaches and the decision makers and your teammates that you're not going to wilt. You're not going to throw in the towel. You're going to find a way to get yourself ready for that next opportunity. And I think there is a big difference in that today. And I'm not saying the quality of play was better back then. Obviously, training is better now. The game has evolved. But I think mental toughness was much more significant a part of being a great player back in those days than it is now.
So you mentioned, like, again, the transfer portal, and again, college football has like changed a ton. I just wanted to know basically like if that would have changed your mindset going into college, because now coaches are looking at players differently, and they just want to know how the player wants to be there basically. So like basically, what was your mindset going into college? Do you think it would have changed if you lived in this era?
That's a great question, Davis. And I would say that it would have to, because, all of us are the product of our environment. And I hate being one of those guys that says, oh, way back when, we wore leather helmets, we were when men were men and the cows ran scared, whatever you want to say. The bottom line is that you're a product of your environment. And I think today being a kid is much more difficult in many ways, and it's much more easy in a lot of ways. You change with the times. And I just think that the way that kids are raised today is much different than when we were kids. And I'm not saying it's better or worse, because kids today are doing a lot of amazing things. And obviously the technology side of it is making life better for all of us, especially us older people, with the technology improvements that the younger generations bring on. It makes our lives much more comfortable and much easier. So this is not a knock at all. I just think that the mentality has changed so much in the last 20, 30 years that you almost can't compare the two, because what was really, I think, the difference maker in making it and being successful back in those days truly was mental toughness and confidence and the ability to step up in adverse situations and improve yourself. Today, everybody's just kind of patted on the back all the time and told it's okay. And, obviously you can't get physical with players. You can't get physical with your kids even these days. You get in trouble if you do any of that stuff. And I just think it's a different mentality. And but it's working. The games are still in great shape. I think Pandora's box has been opened with all this NIL stuff and the things that the money that these college kids are getting paid for. There's no argument you could ever make that would change my perspective on that. It's a bad thing for college football, and I think we're just scratching the surface of the problems this is going to cause.
Do you think that the impact with the NIL is going to impact the NFL in a negative way?
Well, I think it will, yeah, because I think already in the past 15, 20 years, maybe even a little bit further back, I got out of the NFL in 2003, so 19 years ago. I started noticing a little bit toward the end of my career that the younger players were just kind of coming in with a different mentality. When I came in, we were not catered to. We were not. It didn't matter whether you were a first round draft choice or a late round draft choice or a free agent. You had to prove yourself. And if you were a high draft choice, you had to even work harder to prove yourself, because they didn't want you feeling like you were anything special. Nowadays, when these even prior to this NIL stuff, the high draft choices come in, they feel like they've already arrived. They don't have anything to prove. They're already the superstar, and they just need to show up, and they deserve the respect already. And now I think with these guys getting paid in many cases more than high draft choices are getting paid in the NFL, and it's not going to get any. It's not that scale is not going to get any better, in terms of the NFL side of it. I don't think, but I think these players are going to come in with a little bit more of an attitude. I've already been making millions of dollars. I've already got the Porsche. I've already got all the things that you guys have. So who do I need to prove myself to? So it's going to be a dynamic that I think it's going to be really hard to be a coach. I think it's going to be really hard to have a real sense of team in that environment. But I think everybody's going to be on equal footing, so it probably won't make that much of a difference.
I got you.
Let me ask you this. We were just talking to Pete Shaw. So Pete.
Yeah.
And we were talking about GOATs, like, Montana versus Brady and eras. And, Pete Shaw came up with, the receivers, they were beat up the whole way down the field back in those days. And you were in kind of that middle where you still had that. Your receivers were getting beat up. So you actually finished probably while they were still getting attacked down the field. Would you have liked to played in this open era?
Well, yes.
Okay.
And so would any other player, receiver or quarterback, or any of those guys. The only people that would have preferred to go back and play in the other era would be defensive players, because they could do whatever the heck they wanted to do back then.
Oh,
now it's so hard to be a defensive player. You can't touch the receivers. You can't hit them in the head. You can't, and I'm not saying this stuff is bad, because player safety is what the motivation for all these rule changes are. But you can't hit a quarterback high, you can't hit a quarterback low, you can't touch them in the head, you can't land on them. And anytime these guys get touched, the first thing they do is they look back up at the referee and they're like, "Where's the flag? The guy just hit me." When I played, it was a badge of courage to pop up after you had someone drill you in the chin with the top of their helmet, trying to take your head off, and you get up and you slap them in the butt and you say, "Is that all you got? I mean, I'm still here, man. I'm still here. Let's go. Bring it again. Let's go." Back today, these guys are going to be laying on the ground, and the trainers will be running out there before they even hit the ground. So it's just a different game. And like you said, the receivers, I think, and the tight ends benefit from it tremendously. But where it really shows up, and I want you guys to give you a little research project. Go back to the 80s and 90s and research all the top quarterbacks and look at their stats. Look at completion percentage, look at touchdowns, look at yardage on the season, and look how that has changed. And it happened right around 2003, 2004, when the Bradys and the Breezes and the Mannings and those guys started coming into their own. That's when the rules changed. Maybe right around 2000, right toward the end of my career, it might have changed a little bit, but there's a reason why the numbers are different now. Receivers running up the middle of the field are not worried about getting their head ripped off. They're not worried about it, because the safety, if he comes over and hits them above the shoulders, they're going to be thrown out of the game, and they're going to get fined. They're all been raised now and taught not to go for the head. Back in those days, they were told, go for the head, take him out, take his head off. Don't let him come across the middle of the field. So receivers were scared to death, and quarterbacks, it was our job to not throw. We say, we can't throw our receivers into a headache. You can't expose your receiver with a ball where they're like this and the guy's coming straight into him and trying to take his head off. That's on us. That's my fault if I lead him into that. Today, the quarterbacks don't worry about that. The receivers don't worry about that. And they're throwing for 5,000 yards. Yeah. Back in 1999, Kurt Warner and I led the NFL in passing, by the way, that year. Kurt Warner won the MVP and the Super Bowl MVP, and then got a movie made about him and all that other stuff. But I led the NFL in passing that year. But both of us that year threw for over 4,000 yards and over 30 touchdowns. At that time, we were the 11th and 12th quarterbacks in the history of the NFL to do that. All right. Now Marino did it a couple times. Steve Young did it a couple times, but there were only 10 guys before us that had done that. Nowadays, there's 10 guys every year that do 4,000 yards and 30 plus touchdowns.
Yep.
You know, and the number now is 5,000 yards and 40 touchdowns. It's just a different game. And it's not because the players are better. It's because the rules have changed. If you make the argument that players, quarterbacks, receivers are better nowadays than they were back then, you're also making the argument that defensive players are worse because the offensive players are getting better, defensive players are not, you know? So I have a real strong convictions about that argument. And but I do believe that it was all done in the best interest of the game. So I'm in favor of it.
Mm-hmm. And I definitely believe a player that like experienced that transition was Rodney Harrison of the San Diego Chargers. Because again, it was like a head first movement. And when he checked, Jerry Rice became basically a villain and only barely went to the Pro Bowl. I think deserves a lot more credit. But again, those enforcers of safety, was there a specific game plan against a guy like Ronnie Lott or Atwater? Was there just a different routes basically?
Well, you mentioned
now it's kind of just like Cam Chancellor running around now, but there was guys like every week basically for you guys.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, yeah. I mean, you mentioned two great ones there, Ronnie Lott, Steve Atwater, and I can give you a list of a lot more. Chuck Cecil. You know, you can go down a list of a lot of other guys. I mean, they got paid to just take people apart, and they took a lot of pride in that. And you know, now that the safeties, there's some great safeties out there now, and there's some great hitters, and they do it legally within the rules. But it's just totally different than it was back then from a mentality standpoint. And you really got on a good point there, Davis. That is that those players that were part of that transition that came up being taught to take a guy's head off, and then all of a sudden being told you can't do that anymore. You have to play the game differently than you've played it your whole life. Those guys really had a lot of trouble, and it really affected their careers. You're right. They got kind of labeled as the villains, as the bad guys. They had, you know, referees were looking for them. They were, you know, targeting them with penalties and flags, and never gave them the benefit of the doubt. You know, nowadays players don't really have an excuse because they've all been taught since they were kids to do it the new way. But those guys that were playing defense during the transition, you should have one of them on your, if you can get a Ronnie Lott or a guy like that on your podcast, or Steve Atwater, talk to them and hear how their mentality has changed over the years, and how, you know, they wouldn't be able to play in the NFL today because of the rules, the way the game is played now.
Yeah, because they hit too damn hard.
Right, they did.
Well, there's the safety of it, but at the same time, we've lost the aggressiveness and the, you know, you're going to be able to, if you're playing now, you're going to throw a pass that you wouldn't have thrown back in the day.
Right. You're right. I mean, listen, there's a reason these quarterbacks are playing into their 40s now. And I'm not taking anything away from Tom Brady, because I think he and Joe Montana are the two greatest of all time, just because of how consistently they won. That's what I base it on, and how consistently they produce and perform. You know, but there's absolutely no way. People say Tom Brady, he's playing until he's 45 because of his training routine and his diet and his workout routine and all that stuff. BS. Put Tom Brady out there in 1995 and let him get ripped to shreds like Joe Montana and Steve Young and all of us did back in those days. Your body can't hold up. It can't. It's a different game. And the other thing is the arm strength. You Peyton Manning, you know, he played until he was in his 40s, but his last 3 years, he couldn't even throw the ball 40 yards, you know, but he could throw the ball up in the air, and, you know, and he could throw the ball at the seam, and the safeties couldn't come over and take the receiver's head off. And he would be able to get away with some throws that you wouldn't have been able to get away with back when we played, because there'd be stretchers all over the field. These receivers would be laid out everywhere. And when a quarterback becomes a liability because his arm is not strong enough, not a liability just from wins and losses, from player safety perspective, coaches are not going to put that guy in the field. And nowadays, it's not as much of a concern because the game has changed so much.
All right, it's time.
Oh, your call. Here you go.
All right. This is called Coach Paris 3 Questions.
Do I need to put my helmet on, or are we okay?
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
I don't think I have one around me.
Oh man.
We'll try to translate as he goes.
All right, here we go. You ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
What'd you do well?
As a player,
Yeah.
I think the things that I did best, or things that maybe separated me and gave me a chance to play for a long time, were leadership, confidence, being a good teammate, and I think every bit as important as all of it was I was a real good pocket passer. I was strong in the pocket, and I could make all the throws and deliver the ball to the right guy and make the plays when they were there.
What would you do differently?
Differently, I would say that the one area that I really wish I would have worked a little bit harder, and I did work hard at it, but I knowing now what I didn't know back then, would have been my footwork. I would have really focused at an early age on trying to be quicker, more mobile, much more efficient from that perspective, because of the pressure it puts on a defense, and also because of I think if you're more mobile, you avoid the bigger hits a little bit more often, and I think it would have allowed me to be a productive player even longer than I was.
And what would you think that you needed to work on most?
What I needed to work on as a player again?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I would say the footwork again.
Okay.
It's almost the same question for that. Yeah.
The same answer is perfectly fine.
Well, it would be footwork, and I think I would also say that when you look back at the game from today's perspective, and you see how these players are studying it now, and with the technology that they have, and the breakdowns that they can get, and the analytics and all that kind of stuff, I wish I would have been more of a gym rat from the perspective of really just studying the game. I always used to want to go out and play. Just get me on the field, let me go play. And I watched film, and I did all my prep work and did everything I needed to do. And you would never find a coach that would ever tell you once that I was not prepared to go into a game. But I think, especially as you get older, the knowledge aspect of the game, and being able to predict and understand what defenses are going to do the way that Tom Brady does, the way that Peyton Manning and Drew Brees did. I think those are things that are invaluable and really separate the good quarterbacks from the great ones.
That was awesome.
Do you got any more?
Man.
Yeah. So nowadays there's been a lot of people, like, first of all, you played from 88 to 03. So a pretty nice career. And basically
17 years, probably. How old are you?
I'm 17. So
Okay. So your whole life. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so nowadays people are going through their careers, but then they're coming back. They'll like retire for 6 months and then they'll want to come back. What was your experience of leaving the game? And then how did you know that it was time? Because there were guys like Barry Sanders after, not a long career, and then disappeared basically.
Yeah. Calvin Johnson, Barry Sanders.
Yeah.
No coincidence. They both played for the Lions. But that was because they probably never sniffed winning over most of their careers. But although they were good back when Barry was playing, they were a legitimate team for several years. But as far as the question goes, I prepared for retirement the last 3 years of my career. I really, we don't have time to get into it, but I had the rug pulled out on me in Carolina from the Panthers. And the way that was handled after my 14th year in the NFL, after what I had done for that organization and going to the Pro Bowl, it just took all the wind out of my sails. And I was like, I'm ready to hang it. I don't want to deal with this anymore. I don't enjoy training camp. My body's starting to fall apart. Had I not gotten a phone call from Mike Shanahan, who was one of my best friends and my first coach in the NFL with the Raiders, I probably would have walked away. But he invited me to come to Denver and give another shot, and I was able to get myself healthy and play a little bit more. But when it was after my 17th year, I knew going into that season that I really was not able to do it again for another year. My decision was easy. I think I could have played another year if I would have really, really wanted to, but it was time for me to walk away. I had 19 surgeries during the course of my career, and I have both hips replaced. shortly after I retired, and now I need to have knees replaced. So, my body took a beating, and I knew that it was time. And at 38 years old, the decision's a lot tougher, I think, nowadays. And it would have been tougher if it would have happened after my 10th year, if I would have had to be making that decision. And fortunately, I didn't have to. I got to play as long as I wanted to, and I got to decide when I wanted to walk away. Not many guys have that opportunity. So I was very grateful for that.
It's interesting. He brought up Mike Shanahan and how pivotal he was to keep you going for a little bit longer.
Yeah.
We were just interviewing the top running back at De La Salle High School. He's going to go to Fresno State. And it goes right into my question is, who along your career was probably one of the most influential? And his happened to be a Pop Warner coach.
Yeah.
So along your entire career, who was the most influential in your life? And
that's a
coach,
great,
a parent, whatever it may be.
Yeah. Well, first off, my dad was an absolute mountain of a role model for my brothers and I. I've got 3 brothers, and my dad was our idol. To this day, he's still the idol of all of us, and everybody that knew him understood why. He's just one of those guys, and so no one will ever take that seat. But as far as impact coaches had on me during my life, there are different phases of my life. I was very, very fortunate to have some great coaches. But if I had to single out 2, I would single out Lou Holtz. The 1 year I had with him at Notre Dame, which literally changed my life. And I just recently had him out here, and I'm not in San Francisco, as the picture might lead you to believe. I live in Orange County, but I had Lou out here at 85 years old just a few months ago, and he spoke at my daughter's high school. And I made the comment that other than my dad, he's the most influential person in my life because of what he meant to me. And I mean that to this day. And the other would be Mike Shanahan, just his friendship and his confidence and trust in me over the years. He's still to this day one of my very best friends. I would say those 2 guys probably stand out most to me.
Well, that's why the San Francisco, because the sun.
Yeah.
There you go. Because Kyle
Right.
Shanahan, the
Right.
rising sun in San Francisco. Yes. There you go.
So let's go on that same line. What would you tell a young Steve Beuerlein today?
I would, I think I would tell young Steve Beuerlein, everybody always says, enjoy it and appreciate every moment. But I really think I did. My career, when I got drafted in the 4th round, it was a bonus. I didn't expect to get drafted after my junior year because I was in such bad shape, physically and emotionally and everything else. So I got drafted, and I was like, wow, I'm going to get a chance to go play in the NFL. Then I made it, and I said, boy, if I get to 5 years, this will be awesome. And I loved every minute of it. Then I got to 5, and I said, well, maybe I can make it to 10, and then on and on and on. So I think I appreciated everything that went into it and what I was able to experience. I think the one thing that I would really try to maybe point out is to cultivate and take advantage of, not in a bad way, in a good way, of your opportunities as a professional athlete, to really set yourself up for life after football. I think I could have done things a little bit differently. I'm happy. I'm doing fine now. I'm not where I think I should be because I didn't have that vision at that age to really try to set myself up for the rest of my life. So I'm working a little bit harder than I thought I would have to at this point. So if I were going back to young Steve, I would say, hey, put a plan in motion and commit to it early and try to really learn what you want to do when you're done playing football. So you don't go through that process of trying to figure out who you want to be now that you're grown up and you're in the real world. That's a tough time for most athletes. And it was tough for me, but we got through it, and we're still smiling today. So it's all good.
Nice.
That's great.
Because you know what the NFL stands for? Not
Yes,
for-
sir.
Not for long.
You're right. You're right. I was very lucky. I did get 17, but in general, it is not for long. I mean, you think about it, when players retire, even if you're fortunate to play as long as I did, 17 years at 38 years old, most guys don't make it to 30. But if they do, your income and your adult life is going this way the whole time, then all of a sudden you're done and it goes, all of a sudden you're not making anything. And your friends that have gone through school, that have been cutting their teeth, with their careers, are going this way. And when they hit their 40s, they're just getting ready to come into their prime. Whereas as a professional athlete, you're on the way down. And that's a really hard dynamic to manage. And I really struggled with it. And to this day, I still get a little bitter once in a while. But, I can't complain. I'm really happy with how everything's turned out. And the only thing I would change is I would go back and try to really make better career decisions when I was younger.
Nice. I like it.
That's big.
That
That
is
last
huge.
one, you got any more?
I'm all good.
You're all good.
Yeah.
You good?
Yeah, I think.
Man,
I'm
we've
good.
had Steve for quite a long time here, and I just appreciate your time.
Yes.
Amazing. You're just as a person when I met you and how happy you are and how you enjoy the people around you and how you really bring people together. I think that's the leadership he had in the NFL.
Yeah.
And I felt that in person when I met you.
Oh, big time.
So I want to thank you for that.
Especially
Well-
after I got hit in the stomach.
No.
I wasn't going to give you mouth to mouth if you
No.
dropped. I promise you that.
So we thank you so much.
Definitely. Thank you.
I appreciate you guys. We had a great time that day, and if I can ever do anything for you, let me know. And I do believe, and I appreciate what you just said. And to me, that's how I measure if I'm doing things the right way. If I impact people in a positive way like that, I go to bed at night feeling good about things. So thank you for saying that.
Nice.
Thank you so much. We will see you in the future. I know that.
And we want to introduce Davis. He's part of our squad now.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And, so we appreciate somebody coming up and we could share this with you. So
Absolutely.
You got it. You got it.
what up?
What up from What Up Sports Nation? Have a great day and a better tomorrow. And thank you, Steve.
Thanks,
All
Steve.
right, guys. Take care. Thanks.
Have a good one.